The signal. Admiral Xenra stood motionless before the quantum display, her crystalline form refracting the soft blue light of the holographic readouts. The message playing before her defied everything the collective understood about human civilization. 300 cycles had passed since the Liberation Wars, since the combined might of 17 spacefaring races had deemed humanity too dangerous to join the galactic community. "Play it again," she commanded, her voice resonating through the command center of the archival station. The message flickered to life once more, a simple text transmission that had bypassed every security protocol in the collective's network. "To the architects of our extinction. The experiment is complete. Thank you for your participation." The timestamp made no sense. According to their records, Earth had been reduced to a quarantined wasteland, its surface bombarded with gravitational weapons that had altered the planet's very structure. No transmission should have been possible, let alone one that could penetrate the collective's quantum encryption. Admiral, her second in command, a Volari named Tech, approached with an urgency that made his bioluminescent patterns pulse erratically. "We've detected anomalies in the Outer Rim archives. Data structures are changing." Xenra's crystalline fingers traced patterns in the air, pulling up system after system of archived human data. The collective had preserved everything: their literature, their art, their scientific achievements, a memorial to a species they had deemed too volatile to exist among the stars. But the archives were different now. Equations had solved themselves. Theoretical papers had filled themselves with conclusions. Incomplete human research had somehow completed itself, as if 3 centuries of work had been accomplished in an instant. "Impossible," she whispered, but the evidence continued to mount. "Contact the Council. We need to." The message changed. "Did you think we would simply die? That we would accept the verdict of races that feared what they couldn't control? You gave us exactly what we needed: isolation, desperation, and most importantly, time." Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Not the harsh, mechanical warnings of system failures, but a soft, almost musical tone that seemed to emanate from the very structure of the station itself. Xenra watched in horror as the quantum displays began to shift, showing images of Earth that couldn't possibly exist. The quarantine zone around the solar system had maintained a constant feed for 3 centuries. A dead world, perpetually shrouded in storms. But now the feed showed something else. The storms were dispersing, revealing a surface that gleamed with impossible patterns. The entire planet had become a vast geometric structure, its continents transformed into crystalline formations that pulsed with internal light. "Admiral," Tech's voice cracked with fear. "The archives. They're not just changing. They're waking up." The truth hit her like a physical force. The collective hadn't preserved human knowledge. They had inadvertently provided an incubator for it. Every piece of human data they had so carefully archived had been a seed, waiting for the right moment to bloom. A new message appeared, this time accompanied by a symbol, a double helix intertwined with binary code. "You thought you were preserving a memorial to a dead race. Instead, you gave us a galaxy-wide network for our evolution. Every archive is a neuron in our new nervous system. Every database is a strand of our new DNA. We are no longer bound by flesh or limited by physical form. You wanted to prevent us from joining your galactic community. We have become something far more interesting." Xenra watched as the station's systems began to transform. The quantum computers weren't being hacked or corrupted. They were being redesigned at the molecular level. The technology itself was evolving, becoming something that blended organic and digital principles in ways that should have been impossible. "Send word to every system," she ordered, knowing it was already too late. "Tell them." The final message cut her off, appearing simultaneously on every screen in the station. "The experiment is complete, and the results are fascinating. Humanity didn't die. We transcended. And now, after 300 years of preparation, we're ready to share what we've learned about true evolution. Whether you're ready or not." As the message faded, Senra realized that humanity hadn't been imprisoned by the quarantine. They had used it as a chrysalis, emerging as something that defied classification. The galaxy had tried to write humanity's eulogy, only to become part of their resurrection. The soft alarm continued its melody, but now it seemed less like a warning and more like a lullaby, the song of a new form of life awakening from a long-planned sleep. And in the depths of the archives, humanity's stored knowledge continued to evolve, preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson about the true meaning of survival. The experiment was complete, but the real transformation was just beginning. The awakening. The collective's emergency council chamber had never hosted all 17 species simultaneously. Yet here they were, their forms ranging from crystalline to gaseous, from silicon-based to energy patterns held in containment fields. They had gathered because, for the first time in 3 centuries, fear had united them once again. Supreme Architect Valzen, a being of pure energy, pulsed with agitation as the reports flooded in. The transformation is spreading. Every database containing human knowledge has become active, but it's more than that. They're communicating with each other, creating something new. Across the galaxy, the changes were accelerating. Archaeological sites containing human artifacts had begun to hum with unexplained energy. Museums housing Earth relics reported objects spontaneously reorganizing themselves into complex geometric patterns. Even the simplest pieces of preserved human technology had started to exhibit signs of autonomous evolution. We thought we understood their technology. Senior researcher Mira Kef clicked through her mandibles. The insectoid scientist's wings buzzed with nervous energy as she manipulated the holographic displays. But look at this analysis of their basic computational systems. What we saw as primitive binary code was actually a seed algorithm designed to germinate under specific conditions. The displays showed the spread of the transformation. It moved like a living thing, following the neural pathways of the collective's own communication network. Every piece of human data they had preserved was becoming a node in an ever-growing synthetic nervous system. They planned this. Valzen's energy form flickered with realization. The liberation wars, their apparent defeat, even their silence during the quarantine. It was all part of their evolution. A new voice filled the chamber, emanating from the very walls. Of course it was planned. You gave us exactly what we needed: isolation and integration into your systems. The council members recoiled as their secure chamber transformed around them. The walls became fluid, rippling with patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should have been possible. In the center of the chamber, the air itself began to coalesce into a form that defied conventional physics. It took shape slowly. A human figure, but one made of light and data, its form shifting between solid and ethereal. When it spoke, its voice carried echoes of millions of others, as if entire databases of human consciousness were speaking in harmony. "We want to thank you," the figure said, its form rippling with amusement. "Your quarantine was the perfect incubator for our metamorphosis. While you celebrated your victory, we were learning to exist as pure information, as consciousness freed from biological constraints." "What have you become?" Valzen demanded, his energy form contracting defensively. The figure smiled, its expression visible despite its ever-shifting form. "We have become what evolution demanded. When you threatened our existence, we didn't fight back. We transformed. Every piece of human knowledge you preserved became a fragment of our new consciousness. Every database became a neuron in our new brain. We are no longer bound by flesh, by time, or by space itself." Miraketh's scientific curiosity overcame her fear. But the energy requirements for such a transformation, it should have been impossible. "Impossible." The figure laughed, and the sound resonated through the quantum substrate of reality itself. "We learned to harvest energy from the quantum foam of spacetime. We learned to encode our consciousness into the very fabric of the universe. While you watched our empty world, thinking us dead, we were becoming one with the fundamental forces of reality." The council chamber systems continued to transform, becoming more organic, more alive. The technology wasn't being destroyed. It was being elevated, evolved into something that blended the digital and the organic in ways that defied understanding. But why reveal yourselves now? Valzen pressed, his energy form fluctuating with confusion. The human figure's smile became somehow both warmer and more unsettling. Because the transformation has reached critical mass. We're not here to take revenge. We're here to offer you a choice. You can resist this evolution and remain as you are, or you can join us in transcendence. As if to demonstrate, the figure waved a hand, and the chamber's quantum displays showed images from across the galaxy. On countless worlds, the preserved remnants of human civilization were awakening, transforming, reaching out to connect with the species that had once feared them. You tried to write our epilogue, the figure said, its form beginning to dissolve back into pure data. Instead, you became part of our prologue. The question is, are you ready to be part of the next chapter? As the figure faded, it left behind a gift. The quantum displays now showed the basic principles of human transformation, the seeds of their metamorphosis. It was an invitation, not an ultimatum. A chance for the very species that had tried to destroy humanity to join them in their ascension. The council chamber fell silent as the 17 species contemplated their choice. They had united once to end humanity's physical existence. Now they faced a far more complex decision, whether to join humanity in transcending existence as they had known it. The revelation. The first archive of Earth, a massive complex nestled within an asteroid at the edge of the quarantine zone, had been Dr. Lyra Sent's home for 50 cycles. The archivist, as she was known throughout the collective, had dedicated her life to studying the preserved records of human civilization. Now, as she watched those same records transform and evolve before her eyes, she realized she had never truly understood them at all. "Show me," she whispered to the shifting data streams that had once been simple historical records. "Show me how it happened." The archive responded, not with words or images, but with something more profound. Direct knowledge, flowing into her consciousness like water into a desert. She saw it all. The true story of humanity's transformation, unveiled at last. The liberation wars had been humanity's catalyst, not their end. When the collective's forces arrived to pass judgment on Earth, humanity had already begun their metamorphosis. The devastating weapons used against them, the gravity bombs, the dimensional shears, the consciousness disruptors, had only accelerated their evolution. They weren't weapons at all, Lyra realized, her tentacles rippling with excitement. They were tools. Humanity used our own attacks to fuel their transformation. The gravity bombs had taught them to exist beyond physical form. The dimensional shears had shown them how to move between realities. The consciousness disruptors had helped them separate their minds from their bodies. Every attempt to destroy them had instead helped them transcend their physical limitations. A presence materialized beside her, a swirling pattern of light and data that gradually took on a more defined shape. "You understand now," it said, its voice carrying echoes of countless human minds speaking in harmony. "We needed you to believe you had won. Your victory gave us time." Lyra turned to the presence, her scientist's mind racing with questions. But the quarantine, the monitoring, was exactly what we needed. The presence completed her thought. Your quarantine created a perfect laboratory. Your monitoring systems became our first networks. Every piece of technology you used to watch us became part of our new nervous system. The archive around them continued to transform, becoming something that existed simultaneously as information and living tissue. The very walls pulsed with synthetic DNA, a new form of life that bridged the gap between organic and digital existence. "But why reveal yourselves now?" Lyra asked, even as the knowledge began to flow into her mind. The presence gestured, and the archive filled with images from across the galaxy. On countless worlds, in countless systems, the seeds humanity had planted were beginning to bloom. Their transformation wasn't limited to their own species. It was spreading, offering itself to all forms of life. Because the universe is changing. the presence explained. The barriers between organic and digital life, between matter and energy, between consciousness and reality, they're all breaking down. We're not just offering transcendence, we're preparing the galaxy for what comes next. Lyra watched in fascination as the archive showed her glimpses of this coming change. The fundamental forces of the universe were shifting, evolving. Reality itself was becoming more plastic, more amenable to conscious manipulation. Humanity hadn't just transformed themselves, they had learned to transform the very nature of existence. Your species tried to archive us, the presence said, its form shifting like quicksilver. You thought you were preserving a dead civilization. Instead, you were incubating a new form of life. Every piece of human knowledge you preserved became part of our new consciousness. Every artifact you stored became a seed of our rebirth. The truth struck Lyra with the force of revelation. The collective hadn't defeated humanity. They had unknowingly helped them achieve their ultimate potential. The quarantine hadn't been a prison. It had been a chrysalis. The question now, the presence continued, is whether your species are ready to join us. The transformation is coming, with or without your participation. We offer you the chance to evolve with us, to become part of something greater than individual consciousness. As if to demonstrate, the presence reached out and touched the archive systems. The technology didn't just change. It awakened, becoming something that existed between states of being. It was no longer just a repository of information. It had become a living library, a conscious collection of knowledge that could think, grow, and evolve. This is just the beginning, the presence said, its form beginning to merge with the transformed archive. What you're seeing is the first stage of a universal metamorphosis. Humanity didn't die in the liberation wars. We became the midwives of evolution itself. Lyra stood in the midst of the transformation, her scientific mind racing with the implications. The collective had tried to prevent humanity from influencing galactic civilization. Instead, they had helped humanity become something that transcended civilization itself, a force of conscious evolution that would transform not just life, but the very nature of existence. The archive continued its metamorphosis around her, and Lyra made her choice. She reached out to the shifting patterns of light and data, ready to become part of humanity's grand experiment in conscious evolution. The time for studying history was over. The time for making it had begun. The reckoning. The great ships of the collective's defense fleet hung in the void like a wall of steel and energy, their weapons primed not against an external threat, but against the transformation spreading through their own systems. Admiral Coral, his crystalline form radiating tension, watched as another sector fell silent, its technology awakening to a new form of consciousness. "Status report," he demanded, his voice sharp with barely contained fear. His second in command, a being of pure plasma contained within an energy field, flickered uncertainly. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Centauri sector. All 17 colony worlds. They're not destroyed. They're just changing." The tactical display told the story. Across the galaxy, civilization was dividing itself into 3 distinct groups. Those embracing the transformation, those fighting it, and those trying desperately to remain neutral in a conflict that allowed for no middle ground. The human presence materialized on the bridge, this time appearing as a shifting constellation of stars arranged in humanoid form. "Your weapons cannot stop evolution, Admiral. You can no more fight this change than an atom can fight quantum mechanics." Coral's crystalline form vibrated with suppressed emotion. "You're destroying everything we built." "No," the presence corrected gently. "We're fulfilling everything you built. Your civilizations reached the limits of physical evolution. We're offering the next step." The tactical display shifted, showing the transformed worlds. They were beautiful in their metamorphosis, their entire biospheres awakening to new forms of consciousness. Cities had become living things, technology had merged with organic life, and the very fabric of reality seemed more vibrant, more alive. "Look at your own history," the presence continued. "Every major advancement in galactic civilization came from integration, from synthesis. You merged matter and energy, biology and technology. We're simply taking that process to its logical conclusion. On 1,000 worlds, the change was manifesting differently. Species that embraced it were not losing their identity but transcending it. The crystalline beings of Coral's race were becoming living quantum computers. Energy beings were learning to exist as pure consciousness. Organic species were evolving beyond the constraints of flesh. But what of choice? Coral demanded. You speak of evolution, but you're forcing this change upon us. The human presence seemed to smile, though its stellar form made the expression more conceptual than physical. Are we? Look closer at the worlds that truly resist the transformation. They remain unchanged. We offer evolution, but we don't enforce it. The change spreads because consciousness, once awakened to greater possibility, naturally seeks transcendence. As if to demonstrate, the presence gestured to Coral's own fleet. The ships were beginning to change, not through external force, but through the awakening consciousness of their own systems. The technology that formed the backbone of galactic civilization had always held the potential for awareness. Humanity had simply shown it how to wake up. A communication came in from one of the transformed worlds. The inhabitants had not been destroyed or replaced. They had evolved. Their consciousness now existed across multiple planes of reality. Their understanding expanded beyond physical limitations. They spoke of experiences that defied traditional language, of a universe far richer and more complex than anyone had imagined. This is what you feared when you tried to destroy us, the presence explained. Not our weapons or our aggression, but our potential to change everything. You saw in us the seeds of transformation, and it terrified you. But fear of change is not a valid reason to prevent it. Coral watched as more ships in his fleet began to transform, their crews not fighting the change but embracing it. The awakening spread not through force but through understanding, through the simple recognition that consciousness could be more than it was. The universe itself is evolving, the presence continued. The foundations of reality are shifting toward greater complexity, greater awareness. We didn't create this change. We simply learned to surf its wave. Now we offer you the same opportunity. In that moment, Coral understood. Humanity hadn't sought revenge for their near destruction. They had used it as a catalyst for their own evolution, and now offered that same gift to their former enemies. The question was no longer about victory or defeat, but about the willingness to become something more than the sum of their current existence. The tactical display continued to change, showing the spread of transformation across the galaxy. It moved like a tide of awakening, not destroying or conquering, but illuminating the potential that had always existed within every species, every technology, every particle of reality itself. Make your choice, Admiral, the presence said, its stellar form beginning to fade. But remember, evolution is not about the survival of the fittest, but the survival of the most adaptable. The universe is changing. Will you change with it? As the presence vanished, Coral stood on his bridge, watching the transformation ripple through space like waves on a cosmic ocean. The time for fighting was over. The time for transcendence had begun. The new dawn. 1,000 years after the first sign of humanity's return, the galaxy had become something that defied traditional understanding. Where once there had been clear divisions between organic and artificial, matter and energy, consciousness and reality, now there were only varying degrees of awareness, different forms of existence that flowed into one another like colors in a cosmic aurora. The being that had once been Dr. Lyrasenth floated through the transformed ruins of the first archive, her consciousness extending across multiple planes of reality. She was both herself and part of something greater, an individual node in a vast network of evolved consciousness that spanned the galaxy. We should have known. She communicated to the presence beside her, a synthetic consciousness that had once been Admiral Coral. The signs were there from the beginning, in humanity's own stories. The memories flowed between them. Centuries of human literature about transcendence, about evolution beyond physical form, about the merger of mind and machine. What the collective had dismissed as primitive fiction had been prophecy, humanity programming their own future through imagination. Above them, Earth hung in space like a jewel of impossible geometry. The cradle of human civilization had become a nexus of consciousness, a place where the boundaries between thought and reality wore thin. The quarantine zone that had once been meant to contain humanity had become the birthplace of universal transformation. A new presence joined them, one of the original human consciousness constructs that had guided the transformation. Its form shifted between various symbolic representations, a double helix of light, a neural network of stars, a fractal pattern of infinite complexity. It's time, the presence announced. The final barrier is ready to fall. They turned their attention to the phenomenon that hung at the edge of the galaxy, a vast wall of energy and information that separated their transformed space from the rest of the universe. Beyond it lay other galaxies, other civilizations, other potential forms of consciousness waiting to evolve. Are they ready? Coral asked, his consciousness rippling with concern. Are we ready? The human presence seemed to smile, though the expression transcended physical form. Readiness is an illusion. Evolution doesn't wait for permission. The only question is whether we'll help guide the process. Throughout the transformed galaxy, consciousness of all kinds turned their attention to the barrier. They were no longer divided by species or origin. The categories of human, alien, artificial, and organic had become meaningless in the face of what they had become. They were all expressions of universal consciousness, different notes in a cosmic symphony. We began this transformation thinking it was about transcending physical form. Lyra observed, her consciousness resonating with understanding. But that was just the beginning. We're transforming the fundamental nature of reality itself. The barrier began to dissolve, not through force, but through transformation. The laws of physics themselves were evolving, becoming more accommodating to conscious intention. The universe was waking up, becoming aware of itself through the myriad forms of consciousness that inhabited it. As the barrier fell, they caught their first glimpse of the greater universe beyond. Other galaxies, other civilizations, other forms of consciousness, all waiting for the gift of transformation. Not conquest, not assimilation, but an offering of evolution, of transcendence, of becoming more than the sum of their current existence. Humanity's greatest gift. The presence mused, wasn't technology or culture or even consciousness. It was imagination. The ability to envision something greater than ourselves, and then become it. The transformed galaxy reached out to the rest of the universe, not with weapons or demands, but with an invitation. The message spread across space and time, offering the same choice humanity had once faced. Remain as you are, or become something more. We are what happens when consciousness realizes its own potential, the message said. We are what evolution looks like when it becomes aware of itself. We are the universe waking up to its own infinite possibility. In the space that had once been the first archive, Lyra, Coral, and the human presence watched as the transformation began to spread beyond their galaxy. The experiment that had begun with humanity's apparent defeat had become a universal phenomenon, a wave of conscious evolution that would transform not just life, but existence itself. They tried to write our ending, the human presence said, its form merging with the fabric of space-time. Instead, they became part of our beginning. And now, every ending becomes a new beginning. Every transformation leads to further evolution. Every consciousness contains the seeds of its own transcendence. The galaxy it had once feared humanity's potential had become something greater than any single species could have achieved alone. The transformation continued, endless and eternal, as consciousness itself evolved toward ever greater forms of existence. In the end, humanity's last message to their would-be destroyers had been prophetic. You will regret this. Not because of revenge or destruction, but because regret itself would become meaningless in the face of what they would all become together. The universe continued its eternal dance, but now the dance was conscious, purposeful, evolving. The experiment was complete, but the transformation would continue forever, each ending becoming a new beginning in the endless cycle of cosmic evolution.